The years from 2000 to 2014 when you were doing the Oscars and stuff like that, did they always want you every year, or did you have to apply every year for that job?
I did it. I had every year. It was what they're going to reinvent the show. What are they going to do? And I wound up doing 25 years of it. I mean, I was a head writer. I was technically the head writer because everybody traded off those titles for those 4 years. But I was a writer for 22 other shows, and I'd still work on it, but not officially.
Wow.
So that could change any year because every year a new producer comes in and decides how they want to do the show. And first they have to figure out if they're going to have a host and who that host may be. And the host brings in his people. And finally, it's a delicate dance. But I wound up 25 years doing it. 17 of those were produced by Gil Cates, who was a director and a producer and the head of the Directors Guild, and a very successful, obviously the most successful producer of the Academy Awards, because he won a bunch of Emmys for it. But aside from that, he kept it going.
So is Billy Crystal your favorite host?
Well, I love doing it. I did it 8 times. I mean, I don't know if I have a favorite. I mean, they're all friends of mine. I mean, the most interesting, I would say the most challenging and gratifying was Steve Martin, because he's such an oddball.
Yep.
And his approach was so strange and intellectual and yet crazy,
zany,
like him. Yeah. And that was. But I mean, I love Whoopi. I love Billy. I mean, there's nobody who I didn't like. I mean, they're all. I mean, even Letterman, who is. Shows up. It's like he's going to root canal every day. I mean, he was only happy when he was on stage, and even that was fun.
So it's like a round table of the greatest, one of the greatest comedians that and friends with and worked with, and then you could every year be different, and you have to come up with a new game plan every year.
Yeah. And in the last few years, they've had a lot of talk show hosts. They tend to bring their writing crew over with them, and that eats up. So there isn't much room for other writers. And what happens is they often don't know what to do with art direction being presented by Christian Bale. And I get a call.
So you're always getting a call.
They gave me something. I don't think I can do it.
Okay. So is that like a year-long process? Like as soon as one ends, you guys, you would start to work on the next one, or you have to wait until the host gets picked?
First, there is a ritual meeting. The Academy picks it apart and decides what they hated about it, and then they shop for a producer. And if it happens in February, March, it's just around about October things gets settled, and then it's very fast. But in terms of putting it together and getting a host and getting the thing underway, but nothing really can be written until the nominations are announced, because then you know what you're dealing with.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I know that from bitter experience.
Any joke, Bruce, when you did that was memorable, that went over the top? Like one joke that went over the top? Many.
I mean, we one year with Billy, the theme of the show was women, the year of the woman. And there was this phenomenal clip package of women in movies. And it was so moving, and it brought people to tears. And we didn't get to see it it wasn't done until right before the show started. And so we were all like kind of in a flurry, and the show started. And it was also the year of Basic Instinct.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. And
a joke that we had is ironic that this is the year of the woman, when the biggest part any woman had was Sharon Stone.
Yeah.
And you're pushing it to do a cunt joke on the Oscars, and the network censor kind of said, "I see what you did there. This is fundamental." He liked it. He thought it was smart, but the audience had just seen this beautiful clip, and they didn't want to hear a joke about what it really is like for women in film. They had just had 5 minutes of fantasy.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, it just got nothing. And Billy said, "I can't believe I actually I should have skipped it. I should have just said, but I did.
How,
That
how's
happens.
those, how's those after?
How's what?
I was going to say, how is those after parties after you guys get all this work done, and then it's the relief of it's off your shoulders and
well, that's what it is. It's tremendous relief, and nobody remembers them the next day because we're so busy. We're so chemically edited.
That's why I wanted to ask. I figured
they're
that.
Great. Well, the thing about the Oscar after parties is that they are a show unto themselves. I mean, a lot of people who've been sitting at home watching go to the parties afterwards because it's much earlier out here. The show goes on at 5 o'clock, 5:30, and it's over by 8:30 or so. And so the evening is really just beginning.
Oh, wow.
And so people can party on forever. And a lot of the parties are making appearances and who you're involved with, all that. There used to be a great party at the end. By a woman named Nikki Greco. She'd been married to a lot of famous guys, and Danny, her name was Danny Greco. She was married to Danny Jansen. She had a party at a townhouse she had in Century City, and it was only for people who knew and people who were like new to the whole Oscar thing. And it was where no photos, no phones, and no press, and everybody would come in, and you'd walk in, and there'd be all these Oscars on the coffee table in the hall from people who just won them. And everybody was kind of sitting around, stoned and drunk and just laughing. And she was baking monkey bread, and it was breakfast, basically. Everybody was having breakfast going home.
Oh, wow, that's cool. That's funny.
Those are kind of legendary. I don't know I don't know if anybody does that anymore. It's a different kind of Hollywood. I mean,
is it more
tail end of that kind of Hollywood?
Is it more tamer now than back then, and it was better back then because of all the stars back then?
Yeah, just to elaborate on that, Bruce, is everything is so PG now, right? So what's it like writing now compared to then?
Well, writing is different. I mean, the actual experience is I think it's different now because the Oscars are so full of people who are indies, independents, and smaller pictures and all that. So the entertaining isn't as elaborate, and there isn't that kind of old Hollywood camaraderie. It doesn't seem to exist anymore. I mean, the next generation is all about TikToking and getting themselves, getting exposure, and so they go out all the time and take pictures of themselves and all that. And it's not like, oh, I'm dying to hang out with so and so and so and so. And I just don't find it the way. Maybe it's that I'm older and I'm just not a part of that. But I know a lot of them. I'm friendly with a lot of them, and I don't get that same vibe. Now, writing it, anything you write today is you're in a minefield because everybody's so fucking sensitive.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
Absolutely.
And I get it. I mean, when it's my group, I mean, I think Dave Chappelle is a hate mongerer. I don't find him funny. I think he's a poser. I think he poses as a very hip guy who thinks it's okay to talk about people. But he picks on a group in traditional comedy bully style. He picks on a group that can't really defend themselves. And he reduces them by saying, you can kill a black guy and nobody noticed, but God forbid you say something about a trans and you're canceled. I mean, that's reductive and insulting. It's insulting to all those people. It's insulting to black people. Why don't black people get it? So I don't find him. I mean, I used to find him funny, but I don't find him funny. And I think he's riding it the way Howard Stern used to ride it.
Yeah.
And while I was a willing participant with Howard Stern, but I would go on Howard because I talked about men the way he talked about women, and that tickled him. And it tickled his audience. And somebody would actually come out there. The way he talks about tits, I would come out there and talk about dicks. So I felt I was doing a political act.
Right.
Yeah.
But so I understand when my community, I'm not a member of several minorities, is attacked. I understand, but I also understand that people have the right to do that. And I don't think people should be canceled. I think that that speech has its consequences, but I don't think cancellation is a consequence.
Have you seen Dave? I mean, if you do see Dave, would you tell him what you just told us? If you see him in a nice,
I didn't have that kind of relationship with him.
Okay.
I mean, I knew him a long time ago, and probably not. I mean, I don't know. It would depend on
the situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not looking for it. If you're watching Dave,
Yeah.
Trust me, he's not.
He's not.
Yeah, he's not.
We did Circus of the Stars.
But it was a grander time, like Mav said, to do comedy, because now comedy is such. I believe it's a forgotten art now because everything is not funny. I mean, that's just my opinion. Like, I'm 50 years old, but in the 70s, the comedy shows were better. The movies were better. I'm old school, but it's just it's not about the raunchy humor. It was about the comedy for me, so is that the way you agree, or do you see something a little different?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's all reflective of the time. I have a hard time watching a lot of sitcoms now because you get the formula. And unless you have extraordinary players doing something on a situation comedy, it feels routine, and there aren't a lot of that. There isn't a lot of that going around. I mean, Jim Parsons is pretty special and he found a character that was pretty.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
But those are kind of few and far between. Of course, it doesn't go away because network television is still the route to the big money, and so much of what you see, even on streaming platforms, is stuff spun off of network television. It originally was done for network TV, and a lot of television comedy now is shot like movies and without audiences. The stuff that is shot with audiences, the audiences are hyped up so ridiculously that it's I mean, it kind of like messes up the rhythm even.
Yeah. Is there anything you're watching? Is there anything
I
you're
like
watching?
SNL because I don't think they're sweetened. I think that when something gets a laugh, it gets a laugh, and when it doesn't, they live with it.
Oh, but besides SNL, is there anything else you enjoy watching as far as comedy, sitcoms?
I was going to mention a couple of porn titles that I'm very.
Well, if you want to mention those too, sure, why not? We're open for anything.
Ryan Privates is still a favorite of mine.
We're a professional podcast here.
Really, it goes way back, far. All of them. They're old titles, but they're still pretty good. What do I like watching? I don't watch comedies so much as I watch. I love procedurals. All the CSI shit. I love. There are tremendous amount of British shows that I'm crazy about, and there are a lot of British performers who are really funny, like Miranda Hart. But I mean, they have a PBS following or a limited stream following, but.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm along with other people. I'm a big fan of like foreign things on networks. Money Heist is great. Clickbait was terrific. There's a whole bunch of that kind of stuff that I love.
Wow.
Well, you mentioned Steve Martin a little bit ago. Have you checked out Only Murders in the Building yet?
I love Only Murders in the Building.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the finale was today.
People, Nathan Lane.
Yeah.
And, Marty and Jackie Hoffman, who plays the neighbor who's walking down the street going. She's the neighbor who loves the cat but hates all the people. Oh, yeah. Evelyn, I loved her. She was hates everybody else.
It's a great show, and you can feel that vibe. It has almost a Broadway-ish theater-y vibe to it, which is probably because of the cast, like you said. But have you been involved with any talks or anything with any of these streaming services for content or to write or anything like that? Because I have. I was involved with something great, but we had a producer who was out of his mind, and so it's not happening.
It's not breaking news, is it? Because we like to break news on this show.
No, news I cannot break.
Yeah.
I mean, I've probably done something for somebody. I don't remember who, but I have had lots of meetings. I mean, you know, it was the pandemic, and they were absorbing content. I mean, it is the golden age of scripted television.
Yeah.
Because they came back
really
with scripted stuff. Well, because cable and networks had taken the less expensive option of developing reality shows and competition shows, and Netflix and Hulu and Peacock and all that have the money to spend on scripted, and the public was hungry for scripted, so
it creates a vacuum, right? So then that comes back into full swing. But it's
also people now will read subtitles, which they wouldn't before.
Yeah,
and I guess I watch all the foreign shows with subtitles, but I guess there's an option you can get it dubbed if you want.
Yeah, well, Squid Game, that's taking over the world right now, and that's Korean. You know, that's everywhere.
It's a puzzlement to me, but it was just not for me.
Me too.
Now I'll go back and look at it again.
Yeah.
You know, but neither did Parasite. Or Minari, or we're talking about little Asian things that became gigantic American hits.
Yeah.
Minari I got because it was a family thing, and the grandmother was fantastic.
Yeah.
Minari. Or Minari, as they say in actual Korea. I discovered that.
I do want to say one thing, because if I don't say this, I'll never be able to sleep. But you wrote a thing. You wrote a thing that, to me, because I'm a huge Star Wars kind of guy.
You wrote something.
Coming. I know. You know it was coming, and I couldn't. And
I was going to bring it up because it's about substance.
Okay.
It happened the way it happened because in 1977, when did we do it? 77, 78?
78.
78, yeah.
CBS would not let us use subtitles. Very, very sparingly, because they said nobody will read them, because nobody did on television. In fact, nobody went to a small audience went to foreign movies with subtitles. When they were sold to television, they were all dubbed into English. And the Wookiees spoke no language. I mean, which is high on the album. I used
to sound like that in college.
Trust me, I know. So we had to come up with stuff. We had to come up with people like Art Carney, who translated everything the Whoopies said. The Whoopies. I call them the Whoopies. The Wookiees. Yeah. Sorry, I'm cross-pollinating.
Yeah.
So that, and the irony is, the most recent Star Wars movies are all subtitled. I mean, Lupita Nyong'o does not speak a word of English in any of those movies. Everything her character says is subtitled. They don't even try to have somebody else translate for her. It's all that because the audience now reads them.
Right.
So the mass audience, not just the audience that's going to see some art house picture, the mass audience. So that part of the reason the show happened the way it happened was because of that. We had to do it that way.
Okay. How did you land that? How did that come about? The writing part.
Well, George had made a Star Wars, and he was about to start shooting The Empire, and I think he was looking for a way to gin up sales of action figures and to just keep Star Wars in the zeitgeist. Because I preface this by telling people that this upsets a lot of people when I talk about this. A lot of people did not think Star Wars was the be-all and end-all. It was a summer movie. It was a roller coaster ride. They didn't think it was the beginning of a new religion.
Yeah.
And there had been one movie, and it had been a year ago, and another one was about to start shooting. And George wanted to prime the pump, and he told me 10 Star Wars stories, and he had sold them all off into one thing or another, and he had this one left that he sold to CBS, which unfortunately was headlined The Wookiees. And he thought they were going to do a musical, and I thought, how could the Wookiees sing? They trip over themselves going to the bathroom. How could possibly? Anyway, he wound up selling to them, and of course, it became not an original musical, but a variety special to fit what CBS needed. But it was a tremendous advertising tool, and it kept Star Wars thing going because it was before the internet. It was before widespread video cassettes, and
right.
Most people, it was all they had to hang on to, the visual, and it helped. And it got a huge rating. It got Metza reviews, but it was one of many weird television specials. So I was in the weird television special business. Was writing a lot of that stuff.
Well, you had iconic comedians on that special, like
Exactly.
B. Arthur and Harvey Korman. So I mean, to just throw them into a Star Wars kind of show, you know what I mean?
We had to create a world for them that they could be in, as well as the principal characters, who only gave us like maybe 2 days of shooting, and all of their shooting was in the Millennium Falcon, I think, and then one thing at the end. But it was their story. Well, it was the Wookiee story, but they had to intersect with the Wookiees, and we had to find ways to put them in. I mean, as Han Solo and Leia are making their way through the galaxy, they're stopping. They stop on Tatooine to go to the cantina, and all the plot had to be worked out with all of that. And those were opportunities for performance things. And then George had come up with this virtual reality helmet, which if you put on the Wookiee, you would see the Wookiee fantasy projected. So we could have Diane Carroll. It was supposed to be Cher, but Cher dropped out. And Diane came in. And so she was the first interracial, interspecies romantic episode on network television.
Oh.
Where's my...
There you go.
There you go.
Oh.
But that was the old man Wookiee, the old silverback Wookiee had a fantasy about her. The kid had a fantasy about Cirque du Soleil, and later on Jefferson Starship. All of those things, and then stuff that the Wookiees were watching on their televisions with their transporter things, like Julia Child and all that kind of stuff. So it was a tremendous mishmash of stuff.
Okay. Well, if I didn't, ask, I wouldn't be sleeping tonight. So I had to ask.
There was no way it was going to be unified, and also there's no way it was not going to look cheap compared to what they've done on Star Wars.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
right.
And here's the news. The news is it was buried. Nobody knew about it. Along came the internet, and suddenly, in the interim, there have been the 3 movies, and Star Wars had become the Scientology of the nerds.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's true. That is true.
And people said, George, how could you betray us with this thing? And I mean, death threats, and so he got scared, and he tried to buy up every copy and get rid of it and all that. And of course, every time he did the 3 other movies he said he was going to do, and then of course he'd come back with another set of movies that he'd never anticipated, but he is the set that we are now seeing. And a kind of side hustle movies like Rebel One and Solo. So every time one of these comes out, it is unearthed again by the nerds who, and finally he even confessed to it and did let Lego do a Star Wars Lego holiday special that references some things in the Star Wars, like Life Day with the holiday he invented, and a few other things. So he's kind of owned it in a certain way.
Yeah.
Really
there's a great episode of the Goldbergs, if you've ever watched that show, where they reference.
But I don't know about that. I hadn't heard that.
Well, the setup was that, the star, I can't think of his name now, the son, was a huge Star Wars fan, and he waited for a year to watch this, and then he was slightly underwhelmed when it came out.
The holiday special? Oh, the original. Is he talking about the original?
Yeah, the holiday. But it's cool. It's got its own lore to it, I mean, it's a thing.
It's the Goldbergs is set in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
I guess. So he was young enough old enough to appreciate how bad it was. Now I get it. Yeah.
When you were making it and you guys are setting all these things up, is anybody like, wow, what are we doing here? Or is it just like, let's go for it? Like, let's throw in everything.
I always say 2 things. One is that it was the 70s and we were chemically altered.
Yep, fair enough.
Yeah, and the other thing was it had so many masters to serve. It had to be a show that CBS could put on with stars, and it had to be a show that was about Star Wars. So if we knew in 1977 that we would still be talking about this 45 years later, we might have paid closer attention.
Did they have to get B. Arthur and Harvey Korman off of CBS because they were on CBS shows at that time to be a part of that?
Bingo.
Okay.
Harvey was on the Cabernet show, and B was Maude.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a spinoff of All in the Family. So, I mean, that was they were looking for people who were on CBS so they could cross plug.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Harvey wanted to do it. B only would do it if she could sing, because she had won a Tony on Broadway for singing in the original production of Mame, and she wanted to showcase the fact that she was also a singer. So she brought in a song by Bertolt Brecht, Gert Weil, the Alabama song, which you may know if you're a fan of Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, because they covered it. Oh, show me the way to.
I know the Doors version. Yeah.
Who's? The Doors.
The Doors. Yeah.
The Doors covered it too, exactly. And Bet actually covered it.
Okay.
But that because it was from that period. Anyway, the Bertolt Brecht estate would not give us the rights to have B. Arthur sing the song to a bunch of space aliens. But it was not exactly what Brecht had in mind when he wrote it.
I'm sure, yeah.
So Ken and Mitzi Welch, who wrote a lot of the Carol Burnett musical stuff, wrote a song for her to sing. Okay. And that's the song that she sings on the show. And that was her deal breaker. She had to sing a song.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was it like working with George?
We didn't do much. He flew down to tell us what it was all about, and he hung out I came back, I think, when we shot with Carrie and Harrison, and we had also Peter Mayhew, and we had the original C-3PO and the original Wookiee, and the original Darth Vader, Anthony Daniels, and so George came in for that, and he flew right out, because by the time we got to that, there had been so many people calling him saying, "You got to get out of this thing." He decided he had to remove himself from it, but he didn't. He wanted the parts that he could control, and in fact, it came down to the only thing he really cared about was Boba Fett. He wanted to sell Boba Fett as a full-length animated. He couldn't, so he had a short animated thing done in Canada.
That was the first appearance of Boba Fett ever.
That's right.
Holiday special.
Yeah. And so he was very protective of that, but from a distance.
Yeah.
Sitting up in Marin, he wasn't around too much and didn't really want to consult.
Yeah.
I understand.
Here, do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That seems to be how George was.
Anyway,
but thank you. I wanted to thank you for telling me that. Thank you.
They're still using, I believe, one of the weapons from the Christmas special made it into the Mandalorian, the recent season.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I heard that too. Yeah, I did. I'm behind on the Mandalorian, so which I love, but I haven't caught up to where that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great really fan service. They're doing really good things with that, Jon Favreau.
Yeah. Oh, and it's so expensive looking. I mean, it really looks like
it looks amazing.
And Dave Filoni's from Pittsburgh, so that's neat.
There you go.
Yeah. But
so how fun was Hollywood Squares?
It was terrific. My accountant misses it more than I do, but it was tremendous fun. We only shot 36 days a year. We would shoot on weekends. We do 5 on Saturday, 5 on Sunday, and that would take care of 2 weeks. So we shot 36 weeks, and the other 12 were reruns. And it was like a party. We gather in the morning, and I was the head writer, so we worked every day. But when we actually were shooting and I was on the show, we would prepare the questions for each star, and they never knew the answers, but we'd give them bluff answers or joke answers. And it was fun because they'd come in the morning and everybody would get coffee and then start doing the shows. And then at lunch we'd have a glass of wine, and the last 2 shows were real loose. A lot of fun.
Yeah.
And nobody acted up. Nobody acted up because there were 8 other people up there with you, kind of going, "Girl,
Yeah.
get in shape. We got to get through this."
Yeah.
So it was actually fun. It actually was kind of like a party. It was what it was meant to be, which was all these celebrities having fun.
Cool.
Yeah, because the game show aspect of it kind of took a back seat. It got more known for
the mistake that King World made was that they tried to up the game show quotient, and that was because the biggest show on TV at the time was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with Regis Philbin, and there were a lot of big game shows, and they wanted to compete. But they can't compete with this show, and of course they tried, and the audience kind of pivoted away from it because it was not what they were. Too much time was spent on the game. Yeah, and King World went out of business.
Imagine that.
I know you got to go. I know you got to go, Bruce. But I know Gary wants to ask you a couple questions before you roll out, if you could.
Well, these will be quick. These are word associations. So I'm just going to say some names. They're all familiar names to you, and you say the first thing that pops in your head.
Oh, that game.
Okay,
that game. Yeah,
so it'll be a quick one.
The first word is always penis, but.
It's not. They're all names that you know, unless you want to call one of them a big dick. Rosie O'Donnell.
Penis.
Perfect. There you go. Richard Pryor.
Oh, genius.
Okay.
I mean, looking for a word.
Whoopi Goldberg.
Authentic.
Okay. Roseanne.
Troubled. I mean, that's that doesn't encompass it, but I mean, it's crazy, but it works. But,
yeah, it's true. Billy Crystal.
Full scale, old school. That's what it is. Vaudeville.
Okay.
Yeah.
Robin Williams.
I miss him. So it's he was Fast and Furious.
We all do. We all do, Bruce. We all do. Comic genius.
Bette Midler.
Divine. I mean, that's sort of, we use it. And it's true.
Yeah. And then this is the final question. It's not word association, but what do you want to be known for? Out of all your accomplishments, what's one thing that you want to be everybody to know? If you had to write it on your tombstone.
Oh my God. I guess that I managed to survive in show business without being a cunt.
That's amazing. I love that answer.
That's perfect.
Capital C, I guess.
Yeah. But Bruce, any plugs or anything you want to leave the audience with before we get off? What are you up to now?
If you're going to be in Palm Springs the first week of November, Poppy Champlin and I are doing a show it's Palm Springs Pride. So we'll be at Oscars November 3rd. And I don't really have anything else to plug. I'm in development on things, but I'm not working anywhere that I can actually. I mean, I tell stories. I carry on stage.
And you're great at it.
But it's just kind of like creeping back. I'm creeping back into live performances because it's been dark for so long.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
Hello, Pittsburgh.
Glad to hear it.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.